Welcome back. This is the week 1, video 3. We continue on the basic cell processes. And today we're going to talk about the fluid compartments, equilibrium, and steady state. Learning object, we're going to learn the fluid compartments and understand why the blood or the plasma is only a small portion of the total body. Differentiate equilibrium and steady state. Also understand, maintain the steady state requires energy. Why physiologists look at the human body in a compartment fashion? The compartmentalization actually is a common thing in physiology. All levels of hierarchy, cells to organisms, utilize compartmentalization. Why? Because this allows the dynamic steady state to achieve, also allow the generation of gradients. The most cells are not in direct contact with outside world. The cell's external environment is the ECF, extracellular fluid. Therefore, physiologists divide the body into two main fluid compartments. Intracellular fluid, mostly inferred to the cytosol, and it further subdivided by intracellular compartments. Second, extracellular fluid, which is divided further to intravascular fluid, or the plasma, and interstitial fluid. Interstitial fluid that bathes the outside of the cell and the intravascular fluids. For example, the IVF intravascular fluid contains plasma, lymph, and cerebral fluid. In this imaging, we can clearly see within the cell is ICF, and outside cell is ECF, and for this one is interstitial fluid, ISF, and this is intravascular fluid, IVF. In this cartoon, we can see the ICF is the cytoplasma within the cell. The ECF surrounds the cell and serves as a buffer. The ECF is divided into the interstitial fluids, ISF, that bathes the outside of the cell, and the intravascular fluid, IVF. In this case, the IVF is the plasma. And this is the cell membrane. Okay. The things across the cell membrane are tightly regulated. And this is a capillary. And this capillary separates the plasma and the interstitial fluid. But this capillary are pretty leaky. This is another view about the two compartments of the fluid. This is ICF and this is ECF. When physiologists talk about homeostasis, they are speaking about the stability of the body's internal environment. In other words, the stability of the ECF. One reason for focusing of the ECF homeostasis is that it is relatively easy to monitor by taking the blood sample. It is much more difficult to take sample from ICF, although cells do maintain the cellular homeostasis. Let's do some math. Suppose 70 kg adult, 60% water, 6% of the body weight are water. So 70 kg times 60%, so about 42 kg water. And this is a distribute 2/3 to ICF. And for ECF, it's 1/3. And among the ECF, it has two parts: the plasma, IVF, intravascular fluid, and the interstitial fluid, ISF. And IVF is only a quarter of the ECF. And ISF is the rest of the ECF. And this is the plasma, and is 1/12 of total water. We know the total water is 42 kilograms. So this is a cell membrane. We talk about when the solute crosses the cell membrane, is tightly regulated. And this is the capillary membrane between the plasma and the interstitial fluid. And this is pretty leaky. The composition of these two compartments are almost identical, except some protein, or we call it equilibrium. The main difference is that IVF have higher protein content. However, the composition of the ICF and the ECF are very different. In ICF, it has high concentration of potassium, but a low concentration of sodium. In the ECF, we have a high concentration of sodium and a low concentration of potassium. What's the equilibrium? Equilibrium is the equal amount of the substance IVF and ISF. The two compartments were separated by epithelium membrane and pretty leaky. Therefore, IVF and ISF have equal amount of the substance. There's no barrier to movement, no energy expenditure to maintain. So, in the ECF, the two fluid compartments, IVF and ISF, are in equilibrium. ECF and ICF, on the other hand, due to separate by the bilayer, lipid bilayer cell membrane, and only allow the hydrophobic compound to go through and prevent hydrophilic compound to cross. Therefore, the substance is in compartments, and the input is equal to the output for most of the time. However, this steady state requires energy to maintain, and this is called steady state between the ECF and ICF. In summary, the steady state is not the same as equilibrium. It requires energy to maintain. Equilibrium implies that the composition is identical between the ISF and IVF. However, the substrate concentration is different among the ECF and ICF. We call the two compartments are not at equilibrium. Instead, the ECF and the ICF are in the state of relative stable disequilibrium. For living organisms, the goal of homeostasis is to maintain the dynamic steady state of the body's compartments, not to make the compartment the same.